So, warm welcome to Luxdalarna here in Malmö. This is Southern Sweden Design Days, and it's a big pleasure for me, Therese Arvidsson, to welcome Ebba Lindgren, and on link we have Nkuli in Småland. So, you are warm welcome to the talk about the caring craft. So we have chosen this topic, and I would like you to start to get to know these wonderful women. I would almost like to call them craft women. Artist is also a name, but not really designers. And yeah, maybe Nkuli will tell you more about why not just design is the right word for us today. But please, start with Ebba Lindgren to present yourself.
Yeah, I'm Ebba, and I'm an industrial designer, but maybe a little bit more in the broad sense, because I also like to work with arts and craft and like whatever is interesting to me. So the red thread is maybe that I do a lot of collaborative work, and that I'm really interested in like production methods and like working with my hands and so.
Yes. So the caring craft, we will talk about co-relation, creative craft, customers, consumers, and see how that can be maybe customized or how we can connect communities in the world. So please, Nkuli, tell me more about yourself and your way of working.
My name is Nkuli Mlangeni, and I'm originally from South Africa, but currently living in Sweden. And I have a collaborative platform called the Ninevites, and I use it to essentially tell stories that I'm interested in, stories of where I come from, and but it's also a place where I can meet and collaborate with other people from all over the world who are doing similar work, and yeah, that's where I am.
Yes, I wish you could be here with your lovely daughter. You are in Småland, where it's actually where I'm grounded in the deep forest in Gamleby. So it's very interesting to see these different parts of the world, and that's also how we're going to discuss. So I've written all these C words, as I say, everything from craft to creative to conscious consumption to communities, and how to commit maybe to craft. How can we get more circular? And we're coming to the Cape area, and we're coming to China and to Chanapatna.
India,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so I was playing with the C there.
Yeah.
So what does craft mean for you, Ebba?
I mean, craft, I think for me, it's the difference between like producing on a larger scale or on a smaller scale. So it's not mass production, but it's made like maybe with your hands, but it could be made with machines as well. But it's like every object is made like uniquely with more care, I would say.
And you have one item with you here.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me also, when I saw your items just by image, but of course I thought it was glass.
Yeah.
And then to really see that is the industry, the industry million. It's a project too, but to see that actually is a tree that is sort of polished with a lac.
Yeah.
So to find this sort of creative way of making it more luxury. And I think it's beautiful that you have brought a mirror, so to reflect the time and to see that we maybe need to point into more luxury clients, or maybe the people who to have the money to support the craft and to commit to the craft. So yes, and Nkuli, I know that we met first time this Monday when we have a digital meeting, and you mentioned that the name design doesn't really exist in Africa.
I think firstly for me, I would say craft is it's a heritage. It's heritage, but it's also it's something that we inherit from previous generations, and also the fact that it's so in Africa, for example, or maybe if I speak from where I come from in South Africa, a lot of the people who do the work that I am doing, or who had been initially doing this work, were not necessarily called designers, you know, they were called the crafters or beaders, and the product itself was called an artifact. And I think the terminology design is a pretty new one. And I mean, if you look at all the archival stuff in the continent, when it comes to that, it's not labeled as design at all. It's always called artifacts. So yeah, and I think I'm still learning about this word design, and still trying to figure out what it means for me and where I exist within the design world. Because I see myself as, you know, I'm like, I find myself in between the places, because on the one hand, the work that I do, some identify as art and other people identify, and then the actual way of how it's made, it's considered craft, but it also sits in the design world. So I think it's a lot of like just still trying to figure out where I don't know if I even have to have a placement, or I can just be. So it's something that I'm figuring out for myself.
Yes, and I like to see the similarities between you two, Ebba and Nikoli. And so I'm curious about your target groups or your customers. Are they spread worldwide, and what sort of range, what are they willing to pay for the craft today? Like Nikoli, you make amazing, huge carpets, really sort of hand-woven from everything, where you collect the wool from the sheep and you color it and everything. So how can we, I'm curious how we can sort of, almost make people more committed to craft. I would take, for example, for some years ago, I committed into the CSA, like community supported agriculture. So I actually paid some money to get greens for a whole year. So I paid the money to the farmers, the city farmers here in Malmö, to make them grow for me so I can get food on my plate. And I wonder do we have maybe the same, that we actually can get people committed to give you and your communities money to actually create something, the carpet of the year or the mirror of the year, or So I think, how can we sort of get people involved even before the first step, even before you put your hand, your sort of pencil or whatever on the paper, the way you work with your hands to create a craft. That's my sort of long-term goal, how we can get people to get committed to the whole creative process, and really sort of pay you before you even start to customize or to just make a piece. Do you think that would be possible?
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, and
so I think that maybe we need to like raise the status of the word craft, because at least in Sweden, handicraft is not really something that people value in that sense, as they do with, for example, design or carpentry or so. So I think if we can do that and really get people to understand what type of work really goes into making something like this, and that like it's really a skill to create it, and maybe tell the story of how these things are made, because that's usually quite interesting. So for example, this is a wooden base, and you use one of these lacquer sticks to coat it on the lathe while it's turning. So it melts with friction, and it like becomes hard and glossy in just seconds. It's really cool.
And it stays for years?
Yeah, it stays.
Yeah, and and I would say it's a lot about conscientizing society. But I mean, I also realize that this also starts from you as a human being, you know, like in terms of how much you put value on things and yourself. And the idea is not to promote consumerism or for that people must just buy and buy and buy and buy. But I think people must buy with conscious and be aware of what they're buying, who they're buying it from. And I think a lot of people are already starting to do that. And so just putting the value in the materials, from the natural resources that comes from making this, and respecting the fact that people spend time and use their hands to make this piece of art or textile, or or design products. So I think it is really just about that. And I think it's an extension of not just buying product, but also knowing that we supporting initiatives that are mindful. It's mindfulness, I think, and I would say that is the first step, maybe, just to stop and think. And I actually strongly encourage people to stop and think before they buy something, even though I want to make a sale, but I appreciate it if somebody's much more saying, oh yeah, do I need this? Or is it just another thing that's gonna add pollution, or so just that idea of just like, I'm gonna be mindful about what I'm doing right now. That is, I think, is a good first step.
Yeah, and I think also just really looking closely at the thing you want to buy, maybe to see all the details, and because you can see, if you look at this close, you can see that it's not perfectly even. It's striped from the way it's made, and there are some marks, and I think all of that just gives it more life. And if you can appreciate those details, you would want to pay more for it.
Yeah, so I'm also considering, because you have been working with fair trade, and I was doing some CCs here with the caring craft and all the Cs I came up with, the circular and creative, and I just thought that, is it a time for a new fair trade? Because if you say fair trade today, you don't think about luxury, or maybe the richest people, or the people who can afford the beautiful handmade at the moment, but also maybe it's a time to make a new sort of business model, that we maybe need to see, okay, the beautiful carpets you make that are maybe bespoke, sort of, customized carpets, is it possible to rent them? Can we do sort of circular way of, I can, as I say, I'm actually also a mother as you, Nicoli, and why do we all need to buy one pushchair each person? Why can't we rent it for the amount of time we need it for our child, and then make it continue? So I can pay some 1,000 crowns to rent something that is going to work perfectly and securely for my child. And the same, maybe I want to have a carpet for some years, but then to see that, is it possible to make it circular? So I'm curious about maybe new business models, if that feels interesting for you as a craft woman. I just lift
that's a very cool idea, and I think that's a very exciting proposition. One of the and I think already there's some people doing it, and I've been thinking about maybe when somebody buys the carpet, I should offer also the choice of that, if it gets bad, I can fix it, you can return it, and then we can fix it. Or just looking at alternative ways of doing this, or can we use recycled carpet material? But this is a great idea, and I think, yes, definitely there's room for exploration. But I also think that then the question for me is, because I am the person who's selling it from the artisans, I'm the middleman, you could say, between the artisans and the buyer and the consumer. However, how do we then make sure, because the big part is that the artisans need to stay sustainable, and they need to be able to live with their craft, with their weaving, so how do we look at that in a holistic way, still supporting these artisans and crafters that are making the work, but at the same time looking at evolving and innovating and coming up with new ideas around it. So that's definitely something that I'm thinking about it constantly and trying to figure out.
Yeah, because I think, as I say, also, how can we maybe take away the word trend? Why do we need to do trend reports, and why can't we just see the value in each item that is made from the nature, or from the material into the person, as you do in a beautiful way, how you collaborate, make all these different people included in the piece. So yeah, I'm very, very curious how we, maybe with the digital version, when we buy something, even to maybe just buy it from, so pay before it even starts the process, or maybe when you buy something, they're going to be really a little code that you can scan in and get the whole story back. Yeah, so you really get the whole story with you before you, because now we are so visual. We can say do the small films. Everyone also have a camera, and we can sort of, yeah, follow the process from the beginning. If we dare to be that transparent, and that's pretty interesting.
I mean, maybe you could see your object being made.
Yeah, so get people involved closely so they feel like they interact. So if they have money, maybe also they want to see that, how can I almost be a part of this process by not being there? Yeah.
I think it's also important to, because this is a little bit more of a luxury product, but so this craft is traditionally used to make toys. And I think it's important to also keep doing that. It could evolve, but just to cover more markets and to have cheaper options and for kids, for example, or you could just do so much with many of these old crafts that you don't even think about, and it's just good to try to spread them out over many markets and options.
So that's why we have Southern Sweden Design Days.
Yeah.
To get people to know about you amazing women. And coming back to, as I say, we are not here present all. We don't have the audience as maybe are used to be, but you are double, you maybe triple. We can reach so much more. So I know, Nkuli, you had something there also, how we can maybe meet the designers. We have Zoom meeting. So I think the whole pandemic year has opened up for us to actually just really, there is possibility to speak with someone in South Africa. Of course, there is different time, but otherwise we can actually, you can come closer if you want to. And that's thanks for your way of opening up the sort of collaborative studios and make them more visible in social media and on your websites and everything.
That's a very good point, because my work personally is that I work with artisans in Peru and artisans in South Africa, and my product is sold in Europe and UK and other places too. So, and as I mentioned to you, the initial idea for me was, how do I connect the South and now Southern Sweden? The South, so it was being a South African person, I did not know anything about what's happening in South America and how to connect the two continents together, because trade is often happening between the rich countries and the South. So it's South Africa, Europe, or South Africa, America, but there was not South Africa and India or South Africa and Peru. So I think starting to, and also we have such similar history, and in terms of how our culture and traditions and heritage, a lot of it is so similar. So when I traveled there and see this and look at the crafters and how they work and the resources that they have, it was so close to home. It made me think a lot about South Africa, and I could actually learn so much about the challenges that are facing crafters in South America are very similar to the challenges that are facing crafters in South Africa. So it was, and how do we then collaborate and try and find a way of overcoming all of these things together? So I think, being able to live in this global world where things are starting to get easier and movement is starting to get easier, and it's very exciting. And there's a lot of possibilities that can come out of it.
So I like how we have started with this sort of creative thread that we have started just today with this talk, how we can sort of connect it into all the viewers that will see this talk, and how they can, maybe with the hashtag the Creating Craft, I checked it actually yesterday, it doesn't exist. So see how the little person can start something, and how we can start to weave the worldwide weave together and to see, are we ready to start something that is maybe a new way of consuming craft or ordering craft or just sort of commit to craft. So I think we could end just, or we can just take a few seconds and rub in some love into our hands, because this is the craft of sort of appreciating, because the heart is actually, is actually in the middle. So we're just sort of activating all the hearts, and we can put them, just sending some universal sort of wish that this can happen. So if you would like to meet these wonderful women, they are at 2 different addresses here in Malmö. You can meet Ebba at Stoft, Nobelvägen 90, and you can meet Ninkoli at Beyond Us, Södertull. So a pleasure to meet you, wonderful women, and I'm looking forward to the caring craft, how we can spread the word and to weave the big creative wave.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.